This video is part 2 of the Gaza explosion video. If you really want to know how November 11th is known ahead of time, it is imperative that you watch this very important video and this explanation. And it is talking about these signs that began on October 17th and went through October 24th and November 7th, leading to November 28th. This is a very important video. All right, on October 24th, we received a number of amazing prophetic signs. This is a continuation of this story that God is communicating through the prophetic signs that occurred 7 days earlier on October 17th, and continue on, for that matter, on to November 7th, which will also be explained later in this video. And so I'm going to read this email in order to explain the amazing, profound prophetic signs that occurred on October 24th. This is the Gaza explosion video part 2. Make sure you watch part 1 before watching part 2 here. Both of these videos are absolute must-watch videos, especially if you are interested in the Lord's prophetic signs. But even if you aren't, there is important information, of course, in all of these videos, and including this one. So, the amazing signs on 10/24, October 24th. As we can see here, this email was composed on October 25th, 2023. All right. You can see here, October 25th. On October 22nd, 2023, Flight 2059 made an emergency landing after an off-duty pilot attempted to shut down the engines of an Alaska Airlines plane by flipping the fire extinguisher for the fuel lines. Joseph David Emerson is 44 years old, and he is being charged with attempted murder of 83 people. 83 is the 23rd prime number, making this a pairing of 44 and 23, which points to Obama. And by the way, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And one simple way in which he would provide a second witness for us, if we think about it, would be simply through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44. And I know this because I've been studying God's big picture of signs from morning until night, more than full-time hours, for more than 6 years. And the reason for 23 and 44 is simple. The 44th president, the basketball president, wore jersey 23 and will return to the White House when he in 2023. And this is only scratching the surface of the significance of these numbers and why God uses them in his signs, but it ultimately is all about identifying the Antichrist. All right. The flight was a Horizon Airlines flight, a subsidiary of Alaska Airlines. Horizon hints at the Obama-Biden 08-2008 campaign logo of a horizon and the red stripes of the American flag. I'm sure you can picture what I'm talking about, that famous logo with the horizon. The pilot was off-duty, which hints at the former president currently who is off-duty and in between presidential terms, Barack Obama. And that's one of the reasons why the number 23, by the way, is because the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, Grover Cleveland, skipped the 23rd presidency. That's just one of a number of other reasons for why the number 23. And this is why this pilot was off duty. It's symbolism for the current president that is off duty, Barack Obama, who was president and will be the president again, but currently is off duty. Emerson was in the quote-unquote jump seat behind the on-duty pilots. This hints at Obama's current role behind the scenes of the Biden administration. In other words, Obama is in the jump seat, if you will. Alaska Airlines hints at the 49th state. Alaska is the 49th state, and Alaska Airlines hints at that. And the 49th vice president, who will die in a plane crash, hence Alaska Airlines. That's amazing. And her crash is predicted to be the result of one of her engines being hit by a bird. Hence the engines potentially going out in this story because of the guy trying to flip the switch for that. She, Kamala Harris, will be 59 years old and 6 + 6 + 6 days old on the day of her death. Now, when this was written, it was thought that her death would be on November 7th. And God was indeed most for sure pointing to November 7th as being a step in the trail of signs leading to the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, which is now predicted to be on November 11th, 4 days after November 7th. And the signs, some of them on November 7th, confirmed the addition of the 2 + 2 days to November 11th. Okay? Well, anyway, this is why it was flight 2059. 59 hints at her age. Flight 2059 hints at 2 + 5 + 9 = 16. October 22nd, the day of this incident, is 16 days before her predicted death in a plane crash. All right? Actually, it is 20 days before her predicted plane crash, which is astounding, and I didn't realize this until now, because she will be 59, and it'll be 20 days after flight 2059. Wow. There we have it. She will have just turned 59 on November 11th, the date of her predicted crash, and it'll be 20 days. Let's see, is it? Let's just make sure. Yes, it is 20 days. It'll be 20 days after flight 2059. That's amazing. That is clear. That is clear. God definitely was using 59 in this to point to how Kamala Harris, has just turned 59. And it will be 20 days later. And so we have 2059. Wow. Okay. So in any case, God was also pointing to November 7th, and 16 days is 4 times 4, which hints at the 44th president, and it pairs with Emerson's age, which is 44, and also the 83 people on board, the 23rd prime number. He was charged with attempted murder or something to that effect for the 83 people also. Okay, what is amazing is that in flight 2059, we also have a hint at 2 days and then 14 days, which is 5 + 9, okay? So in 2059, we have the 2 followed by a 0, so a space, and then a 14, because 5 + 9 = 14. 2 days after October 22nd was October 24th. The reason for this email explaining the prophetic signs that occurred on October 24th. And Harris's predicted crash 14 days later on November 7th. Okay, so this is just more confirmation that God was indeed pointing to November 7th, okay? This is how God's science works. I know it's a little bit complicated, but this is God we are talking about. He can do whatever he wants. It's up to us to figure it out. It really isn't complicated. I know someone who's brand new to this would expect a crystal ball, and for someone like myself to claim to be making a prediction to have it perfect the first time. But that's not how it works. It's a big picture of signs. It's like a puzzle, and the more pieces that are added, the clearer it gets. But God, how the big picture works is that in order to create the big picture, we have these interval steps, these dates that God points to, and then provides more information through the signs on those dates. And there have been maybe 200 or more of these dates over the last years that were known in advance that God was pointing to. And with an exception of a couple, they've all been 100% correct. And anyway, that's how he builds his big picture, is through establishing these steps, if you will, along the trail, if you will, of signs leading to the end prediction. In this case, Kamala Harris's plane crash. And so my point is that this is valid. Yes, her plane didn't crash on November 7th, but he was definitely pointing to November 7th in many different ways. And this is just one that I forgot about since I first wrote this email, but this is, one of the ways. And again, it's 2 days from October 22nd, from this sign that I'm talking about, to October 24th, which was another step. And then it's 14 days to the next step, which I believe at this point is the last step before the actual event. We will see what happens on November 11th. Maybe it's another step as well, because that's just how it works. All right. So now, so that's the end of that paragraph. Or no. Okay. On November 24th, Emerson was in court. Okay, so the 2 days later, he was in court. So we have a related event on 2 days later. And the charge documents were made public. The police report that Emerson admitted to taking psychedelic mushrooms 48 hours before the flight, which hints at the 48th president, and that he was sleep deprived and not in his right mind. Before he attempted to shut down the engines, he told the pilots, quote unquote, "I'm not well." He later told the flight attendants to cuff him or else it was going to be bad. He tried to pull the handle on the door of the plane to the exit of the plane. This sounds like a demon-possessed man. This is why the incident is 181 days before it is predicted that the zombie pandemic and mass demonic possession will begin on April 20th, 2024. 181 is the 42nd prime number, and in Bible prophecy, the number 42 is associated with the Antichrist. What further confirms, in other words, a second witness, to this 181 days connection, is that on this same day, there was an incident at an airport in Houston, Texas, in which flights were halted after two planes clipped each other's wings, leaving debris on the runway. Houston, Texas, and so the airport was closed. Houston, Texas is in Simple English gematria, which if you don't know what gematria is, Hebrew, Roman, and Greek letters are also numbers, and as such, names and words can be converted into a numeric value. And when we do this with Simple English gematria, which is A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, Houston, Texas equals 181. And that is significant because Houston is Harris County. Harris County is essentially Houston, which of course hints at Kamala Harris, who is predicted to die in a plane crash. Hence, we have on this day in Harris County this date that was predicted ahead of time to be a step in the trail of signs leading to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on November 11th. We have on this day, October 24th, these two planes that clip each other's wings, shutting down the runway and the airport in Houston in Harris County. As well, on this day, actor Richard Roundtree died on October 24th, and Richard Roundtree in Simple English gematria also equals 181. R is the 18th letter, and the initials RR for Richard Roundtree also hint at 1818 and 181. He died at the age of 81, which also hints at 181. So Richard Roundtree with his initials RR give us 18 and 18, and he died at 81, which definitely is a hint at 181. Furthermore, his name, Richard Roundtree in Simple English gematria, is 181. And he died on the day of this prophetic plane crash sign in Harris County. And Houston, Texas is 181. Richard Roundtree starred in the movie Shaft, an iconic movie that has been inducted into the National Registry, which is something of a big deal. Not many movies get inducted. I think it says something to the effect that it needs to be culturally, historically significant, etc., in American culture. And that's the case with the movie Shaft. It is the iconic first, I believe, or groundbreaking blaxploitation movie. I think that's what they call it, the blaxploitation movies of the, I guess, 1960s. Anyway, Richard Roundtree is like the iconic figure for that genre of movie. There was, what's his name? I'm forgetting his name now. The current modern day actor, Samuel L. Jackson. So Samuel L. Jackson, who has played roles, I guess, similar to this character that Richard Roundtree played in Shaft. In fact, I think the name of the character is John Shaft or something Shaft. And anyway, he said that this actor was his mentor or something to that effect, something like a figure that he looked up to. All right. So anyway, the point here in prophetically is that Shaft, the name, hints at a shaft of lightning. So the word shaft in English is used in context of a shaft of lightning. And lightning is Barak in Hebrew. Barack Obama's name in Hebrew. Okay, so let me just finish this sentence. Barak in Hebrew means lightning, and Harris's plane is predicted to be struck by lightning. Her crash will symbolize when Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. The name Barack Obama in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. Barak means lightning. Bama means high place, which in the Bible is a metaphor for heaven. For example, it is said that Lucifer fell from the high place. And O, in the language Jesus would have spoken, is from. And so Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he said this anyway, knowing that it would confuse us because he knew there would be a famous president named Barack Obama, or he was revealing the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. And when Kamala Harris falls from a high place, Bama, and crashes and is replaced with the Antichrist, it will symbolize when Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven, especially if her plane crashes due to a lightning strike, which is also what I am predicting. And if it isn't due to a lightning strike, or if it's never known the real cause, it'll still symbolize when Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. More confirmation of there being a second sign on October 24th in the Flight 2059 Emerson story, because the first part of this story was on October 22nd, and so there was a part 2 of this prophetic sign on the 24th, and more confirmation of this is that on October 24th, Tom Emmer was nominated for Speaker and then withdrew his candidacy 4 hours later after Trumpet's criticism. Trump is God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet and highlight his prophetic signs. Emmer hints at Emerson, the name of the pilot. Tom Emmer hints at the number 3. And the sign of Tom Emmer on October 24th pairs with 14 days to Harris's predicted crash, and gives us 314, the area code of St. Louis, where she is predicted to crash. And again, this 14 days to October 24th gets us to November 7th, which is a legitimate, 100% correct connection. What I just read is valid because of the signs that occurred on November 7th that are leading to November 11th. And that's just how his signs works. That's how it works. It's a trail of signs, and he is fully entitled to make a connection that isn't the ultimate prediction, but is related to it. Like I'm explaining in this video here, these signs, these plain signs, the Emerson pilot, and also the planes that clipped each other in Harris County, they occurred on October 24th, and God was pointing to October 24th at a time as being the date related to Kamala Harris's predicted death in a plane crash, and it wasn't, but that doesn't mean that the connections to October 24th weren't valid, because we had the signs that confirmed all of the analysis and established that it was a step in a trail of signs. So anyway, I realize that people will be skeptical of that. Probably you aren't by this point in this video if you are still listening. But the point is also, if you are, fair enough. I completely understand. You don't know where I'm coming from after knowing God's signs for 6 years. But this is the case, and it will be proven when the prediction finally happens. And that will prove everything that I'm saying about there being steps along the way, like I'm trying to explain here. All right, so we were establishing here that Tom Emmer is symbolism for the number 3, which I will explain. But the day of this Tom Emmer sign was 14 days before November 7th, which hints at 314, the area code of St. Louis. It is also a hint at Isaiah chapter 31:4, and it is also a hint at pi, which is another story. But essentially, the eclipse passed over St. Louis in 2017, and eclipses are calculated using pi, God's transcendental number that he has baked into his creation. Now, Tom Emmer was the third representative to be nominated for Speaker of the House after McCarthy was ousted. Emmer was born on the date 3/3. Okay, so he was the third to be nominated Speaker in the chaos, if you recall, a week or so ago, regarding the Speaker of the House nomination process. He was the third one, and he was born on the date 3/3 in 1961, exactly 22 weeks before the birth of Obama, the Antichrist. And the number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, as I've explained many times. And Emmer represents the 32nd state. He's from Minnesota. And the 32nd prime number is 131, which hints at G131 in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance, which is the word blood disease. Emmer represents the 6th district of Minnesota, and his being the third nomination hints at 3 6s. Okay, which is 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. Emmer is known for a controversy in which he wrote a fundraiser letter claiming 3 people had bought the Congress for the Democrats: Michael Bloomberg, Tom Steyer, and George Soros. He was accused of anti-Semitism, even though Steyer attends a Baptist church. But it was a big story, and it's related to Tom Emmer and who he is, what he's known for, and it's 3 people. Again, another confirmation that Tom Emmer symbolizes the number 3. This is a sign in which God is communicating that the Democrat Party is corrupt and bought. So, in other words, it works the other way around too. The fact that God is confirming the prophetic significance of Tom Emmer and the number 3 confirms the prophetic significance of him naming 3 Democrats as being the as buying accusing them of buying Congress makes it true. And of course that's true. I mean, everyone should know that. That's politics these days. And the Democrat Party, it is completely bought and paid for and completely corrupt through and through. 100% evil and corrupt. All of them. Emmer was also one of the 126 representatives to sign the amicus. And that's not to say that Republicans aren't either, but there's still life left. The Republican Party is still breathing. There's still some life left in the Republican Party, whereas the Democrat Party is completely bought and paid for. Emmer was one of only 126 representatives to sign the amicus brief in support of the Texas versus Pennsylvania lawsuit regarding the referendum. 126 hints at 1,260 days of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. A number of days regarding the period of the Antichrist mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy, but it is only symbolism. We are well inside the 1,260 days. And make no mistake, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction, the reason for this prediction from God is to prove this, that we are already well inside the 1,260 days. Case closed, end of debate, no more discussion. It is finished. We are definitely inside the 1,260 days when the prediction comes to pass. That's the purpose of the prediction. After Tom Emmer withdrew, Mike Johnson was made the 4th speaker nominee on this same October 24th date, this date that God was pointing to ahead of time. The initials MJ, as in Mike Johnson, equal 23 in simple English gematria, as does Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, these prophetic figures that God has been using. And the reason is because Obama wore jersey 23 in high school. On this same day, LeBron James, at the basketball season opener, wore jersey 23 again. Oh, speaking of which, it was the 4th time he had changed his jersey number. Okay, so we have this 4th speaker nominee with the initials MJ, which equals 23 in God's signs. And on the same day, LeBron James, who famously wears jersey 23, changed back to 23 for the season opener for this season. And it was the 4th time. And Michael Johnson was the 4th nominee. Jersey 23 and 4th time hint at the 4th speaker nominee whose initials equal 23. James originally stopped wearing 23 the first time out of respect for Michael Jordan. So he began his career wearing jersey 23, and then he changed his mind and out of respect for Michael Jordan, whose initials are MJ, which equals 23. The Antichrist wore jersey 23, Obama, and will be thrown into the lake of fire. James wears 23 and plays for the Lakers. The Lakers got their name when they played in the 32nd state. We already had the 32nd state come up in a prophetic sign on this day. And 32 is a reflection of 23. LeBron James changed his number from 6 to 23 out of respect for Bill Russell, who wore number 6. So it's funny. He stopped wearing 23 out of respect for Michael Jordan, but now he's back to wearing 23 out of respect for Bill Russell. On the same day that LeBron James changed from 6 to 23, the representative for the 6th district in the 32nd state was changed for the rep with the initials MJ, which equals 23 and hints at Michael Jordan and his jersey number 23. That's amazing, all of this, right? Hope you're catching all of this. In Hebrew gematria, LeBron James equals 923. That is amazing. I forgot about that. Okay, let me see. Do I say it right here? Michael Jordan wore 23 and also number 9 for the Dream Team in the Olympics, in which he outscored their opponents by an average of 44 points. Well, so I'm writing to people that already know what I'm talking about. So a huge thing, very, very important in God's signs is him pairing these numbers together, like I was mentioning. But I shouldn't say especially, because that would diminish the pairing of other numbers like 23 and 44, like I explained. But God pairs 9 and 23. It's huge. Pairings of 9 and 23. And that's why LeBron James equals 923. And as I just explained in the sentence following this, it relates to basketball. Furthermore, because Michael Jordan, for one thing, wore jersey 23, but he wore number 9 for the U.S. Olympic Dream Team, in which they outscored their opponents by an average of 44 points, which hints at the 44th president, who became president in 2009, will return to the White House in 23, and when he played basketball, wore jersey 23. The rapture sign alluded to the rapture from the basketball president who wore jersey 23 and became president in 2009, and this sign occurred on the date 9/23. All right, now, if you don't know what the rapture is, that's described in Bible prophecy as being the moment when God's faithful will be rescued and spared the severe persecution from the Antichrist. The story of James's and the Lakers season opener, in other words, the news story, was how James only played for only 29 minutes, and how this would be the new norm for James as part of a strategy to overcome the new NBA rules regarding resting players. This hints at the strategy of Barack Obama to overcome the rules regarding being elected more than twice. He will claim to be in for a short period until the next election. Like the 38th president, Obama will be appointed instead of elected, and the Lakers lost to Denver's 119 points, which hints at 9/11 in the 38th state, Colorado, on October 24th. James needs rest because he is 38 years old. A second witness confirmation to the game being in the 38th state and the reason for his rest. And strategy being only in for a short period, which hints at the strategy for Obama to claim that he's only in for a short period until the next election. Because what is going to happen is that after Kamala Harris dies in a plane crash, Michelle Obama will be appointed the vice president, and then Joe Biden will step down, and then she, as the president, will make Barack Obama her vice president. The initial strategy will be to run for election in 2024, which is why Michelle Obama will be the president. Okay, so she will run in 2024. But in the meantime, Barack Obama can be made the vice president. That will all change next January when things change. Probably there'll be a realization that there won't be another election, but I also predict that the two will get divorced and Michelle will leave the White House and Barack Obama will have no choice but to become the president until the next election, but there won't be one anyway. And when he becomes the president again before the next election, he won't be able to run, but it won't matter by that point. Okay, so Matt Gaetz, the U.S. Congressman Matt Gaetz, is said to be responsible for the current quote-unquote chaos in Congress. Matt Gaetz's middle name is Lewis. He was born exactly 37 years before the three sets of seven sign in St. Louis. Okay, on May 7th, 2019, the St. Louis Blues won Game 7, which began at 7 p.m. in overtime with a goal from hometown hero player number 7. All right, so we need to explain a few things. First of all, the number 37 hints at three sets of 7. That is relevant because of the book of Joshua, when the Israelites marched around the security walls of Jericho in symbolic three sets of 7 before they collapsed in God's judgment. 37 years is also 444 months, which gives it a second witness because it hints at the 44th president. And the walls of security of America will be collapsing when the Antichrist becomes the president, the 44th president, becomes the president again. Now, on this May 7th date in 2019, let's see. Yeah, I mentioned it later, so I'm not going to mention it yet. So on this May 7th, 2019 date, which was the 37th birthday of Matt Gaetz, St. Louis won Game 7. This was the first playoff series win on their way to winning the Stanley Cup after having earlier in the year been in last place in the entire league. It was a rags to riches story. It was a phenomenal story. It made the fans in St. Louis go nuts. They were loving it, and on and on. But there's huge prophetic significance to all of this, which I believe that I'll probably get into a little bit in this paragraph, so I won't jump ahead. But the point is that on the 37th birthday of Matt Gaetz, okay, also, I don't know if I mentioned this either, but St. Louis is known for its Gateway Arch, the gateway to the west, which commemorates the expedition of Lewis and Clark. Oh, speaking of Lewis, you know what? I don't know if I've mentioned this in this paragraph because I don't remember. Right? So that would be why the middle name of Matt Gaetz is Lewis. Okay. It is hinting at St. Louis, but it's also Lewis and Clark. Okay, and St. Louis isn't named after Lewis in the Lewis and Clark expedition. But anyway, the point is that we had a 3 sets of 7 sign on this day, and this was 37 years after the birth of Matt Gaetz, and St. Louis is known for its gate. And in the Bible, judgment on a people symbolically begins at the gates, which is why God is pointing to the gate of St. Louis, and for that matter is why Kamala Harris's plane crash will be near the Gateway Arch. Okay, so anyway, we had this prophetic win of the St. Louis Blues, which, by the way, was against the Dallas Stars. And that's because the main theme of God's big picture of signs is judgment warning for the church, which is symbolized by Dallas, the American Evangelical Church of Laodicea, which God is very, very displeased with, which is why the end times are happening now. Okay? And you don't hear that very much in other from other people talking about God's signs, and that's one reason why God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. The others will more or less cheerlead or present God as a cheerleader for the church, but it is not the case at all. God is very, very displeased with the church. And these signs are primarily judgment warning for the church, which is why we had this prophetic sign against Dallas, because Dallas in God's signs symbolizes the American Evangelical Church. For that matter, the location in which the heretical doctrines are taught that churn out the nation's pastors that preach for money, something Jesus forbid. And he also forbid having authorities in the church and leaders, etc. Okay? But this will all be explained more in the 23 church signs video. If you are a Christian, make sure you watch that video. And I really don't know what you are thinking if you don't watch it after the prediction comes to pass. It's the most important video. All right. So this game in which there was a 3 sets of 7 with the hometown, because the player that scored the winning goal in overtime of Game 7, he is from St. Louis. That's amazing too. This was 7 days before the anniversary of Israel's rebirth in 1948, and Lewis and Clark set out from St. Louis exactly 144 years before the rebirth of Israel. In the Bible, 144 is symbolic of Israel. Well, it's in the book of Revelation, and it's 12 times 12. And, well, let's just leave it at that. I got to continue. The St. Louis Blues are colloquially known as the blues and whites, the blue and whites, as are things made in Israel. And the Blues were one of 6 expansion teams in 1967, the year that Israel expanded its territory in the Six-Day War, which is why 66 days before the 3 sets of 7 sign in St. Louis was the day that the 144-year-old fig tree collapsed in the historic plaza in downtown Los Angeles. Lewis and Clark were looking for a passage to the West Coast. The Pilgrims took 66 days to cross the Atlantic and anchored off of Cape Cod. 144,000 days, which is the number from the book of Revelation that I just mentioned, which is why the 144-year-old fig tree. Okay, so they anchored, they took 66 days to cross the Atlantic and anchored 144,000 days before the path of the 2015 eclipse passed over the Atlantic that hinted at the crossing of the Pilgrims. Just briefly, this eclipse was on the spring equinox, which is the day in the year in which day and night is evenly split, and it was also the first day of the calendar year in the Hebrew calendar. So it split the calendar. Well, actually, because there's 2 calendars in the Hebrew calendars. There's the civil and the religious. And it split the civil calendar, okay? So it split it. And also, it split the blood moon tetrad. The eclipse occurred in the middle of the 4 blood moons, if you know what I'm talking about. And anyway, that was all symbolism for the prophetic significance of the eclipse, which its path split, an uncanny splitting of the old world from the new world. If you look at the map of the path of this eclipse, you can see that it's clearly delineating a split between the old world and the new world, which is why it hinted at the Pilgrims, because it occurred 144,000 days after the Pilgrims landed. That is astounding. It's huge. In fact, it's so huge. Think about that. That is the primary purpose of the blood moon tetrad, what I just described. The blood moon tetrad primarily pointed to the eclipse in the middle of it, and nowhere have I encountered the true explanation for the prophetic significance of that eclipse, which is what I just explained. It points to the Pilgrims, which is why it was 144,000 days after the Pilgrims landed. All right, let's move on. Let's see. The expansion of the NHL and Israel came in the 50th year after they were founded, both of them, in November of 2017. All right, 50 years is Jubilee year in the Bible, and that's when restoration happens. Okay, the restoration of Israel. There was a big announcement regarding the timing of the release of Obama's A Promised Land book on the day of the 3 sets of 7 sign in St. Louis on May 7th, 2019, which is exactly 54 months before it is predicted that Harris's plane will crash in St. Louis on November 7th. And once again, November 7th was completely valid, and so is this connection. 11-7 hints at 11 times 7 equals 77, which is hinting at Flight 77 on 9/11. And she is the 49th vice president, which hints at 7 times 7. This chaos in Congress that Gates started with the ouster of McCarthy climaxed on October 24th, 14, in other words, 7 plus 7 days before Harris's predicted crash. And Gates is known for blocking McCarthy's election as Speaker last January by voting against McCarthy 14 times before voting present instead of against McCarthy, which finally ended that whole chaos back in January. The signs on October 17th, 2023 hinted at adding 7 days to get October 24th. But they also hinted at 3 sets of 7 days to get November 7th. Again, Harris visited the university with 7 academic colleges, and she is the 49th vice president. I explained this in part 1 of this video, the Gaza explosion video. 49 is 7 times 7. The Israelites marched for 7 days and then enacted a 7 times 7, 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. 7 days after she visited 7 academic colleges, Trump sounded with his criticism of the 3rd nominee for Speaker, which is in itself a symbolic 3 sets of 7. This hint, because the Hebrews blew trumpets in their 3 sets of 7. This hints at the 7 days and then 7 plus 7 days to November 7th. The airplanes in Harris County, Houston, clipped each other 7 days after Harris flew her plane to 7 academic colleges, and Hobby Airport in Houston is 7 miles from downtown Houston. On October 24th, it was reported that 700 Palestinians had died in the last 24 hours. The agency in Gaza confirmed that these 700 deaths made it the deadliest 24-hour period in the current war. The war began when Israel suffered its deadliest 24-hour period with 1,400 deaths, which is 7 plus 700 deaths. The 700 deaths confirms the 7 days from the Gaza hospital explosion, and 1,400, which is 700 plus 700, confirms the 14, which is 7 plus 7, days from October 24th to Harris's predicted engine explosion on November 7th. And again, that was a step in the trail of signs. The signs on this date confirmed this, as I'll explain in a minute, which will lead to the 48th president, who will make a peace deal with Israel. This is why on October 24th, there were 2 different reports regarding Hamas divers attempting to enter Israel. One report said it was 4 Hamas divers that were killed, and another report said it was 8 Hamas divers, which hints at 48. The 48th president. Netanyahu, the leader of Israel, symbolism for Joshua, who led the Israelites, 3 sets of 7, also said publicly that they hit Gaza the hardest so far on October 24th. He said this on October 24th. So he confirmed the agency inside Gaza that was saying that it was its deadliest day with 700 deaths. Netanyahu said the same thing. And he is symbolism for 3 sets of 7 and Joshua. And so that's all confirmation for October 24th being 7 days after the signs on October 17th and the explosion and Harris visiting 7 academic colleges, etc. And confirmation for the 7 plus 7 days to November 7th. On October 17th, the day of the Gaza hospital explosion sign, the trailer for the movie The Zone of Interest, hints at Gaza, about the Holocaust was released. 7 days later, on October 24th, the trailer for the Steve McQueen documentary movie Occupied City, this is not the old Steve McQueen, but some new director or something, which hints at Gaza, was released. And it was released by the same company, which is also about the Jews in Nazi-occupied Netherlands and the Holocaust, and how it hints at and parallels with our current time. The movie overlays images of CVD restrictions, protests, with narrated facts about 1942 Amsterdam. Because, of course, it's the same thing happening again, but in a new form. The new Holocaust, the new genocide, the new Nazism, the civil war between the blue team, by the blue team, I should say, and their restrictions, just like the restrictions of the Jews in the Netherlands in 1942, including restrictions being able to go to a movie. Speaking of movies, both movies are produced by the entertainment company A24. which hints at 2024. Both trailer releases are timed with prophetic signs in Gaza 7 days apart. Okay? You follow that? Both of these trailers about the Holocaust are timed with these two signs in Gaza that are 7 days apart. Gaza signs that are 7 days apart and overlap signs that regard Harris's predicted plane crash that are also 7 days apart. Harris just turned 59 years old. On October 24th, there was a sign involving Flight 2059. October 24th is 59 days before the predicted fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 17 on December 22nd, 2023, when it is predicted that Israel will nuke Damascus. 59 is the 17th prime number. The signs on October 17th and October 24th in Gaza regard rocket explosions. Just like how it is predicted that the fulfillment of Isaiah 17 will be the nuking explosion of Damascus, which confirms the predicted nuclear explosion in Damascus on December 22nd. God pairs 17 and 9 to confirm the connections. The 17th prime number connection from October 24th is preceded by exactly 90 days, which is the equivalent of 2,160 hours, which is 6 times 6 times 60 hours, which hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist, after the fox on the Temple Mount on the 9th of Av in the Hebrew calendar. October 24th is also exactly 900 days, which is 21,600 hours, another 666 hint, after the first night of clashes on the Temple Mount that began the mini war on May 7th, 2021. On May 7th, 2021, the two teams from the 17th state baseball teams played each other, and the Cincinnati Reds pitched the fourth no-hitter of the season, which was the same day that the helicopter on Mars flew its fifth flight and first one-way flight, which hinted at 54, the 54th Regiment, the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, and programmable currency used to enforce the mark of the Antichrist, which is why the pitcher on the pitching mound, which symbolizes the Antichrist on the Temple Mount in Bible prophecy, was player number 22, because the number 22 symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist. And the story was how his son had put a good luck, Incredible Hulk tattoo on his arm that day, which symbolizes the changed chromosomes that the mark of the Antichrist thing does. And you know what I'm talking about. The thing that you can't talk about is the mark of the Antichrist. Case closed when this prediction comes to pass. And this is the purpose of the prediction that is from God. Make no mistake. It isn't a precursor, a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. It is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It does not need an additional something, such as additional technology or additional false religious worship or a new supposed dispensation age after all Christians are raptured. All right. This 900 days connection to May 7th, 2021 is preceded by exactly 8 plus 8 plus 8 months. The name Jesus in Greek gematria equals 888. And 8 plus 8 plus 8 months hints at 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 months. And the 3 sets of 7 sign in St. Louis on May 7th, 2019, which I explained a minute ago. On October 23rd, 2023, there was a car pileup in Louisiana caused by a rare incident of superfog, fog mixed with forest fire smoke. It was initially reported that there were over 150 cars piled up on the I-55. This hints at Harris's predicted crash 15 days after this near the I-55 in St. Louis. Even the I-55 hints at 15, as the I hints at 1. The next day, the representative from Louisiana became the 4th nominee for Speaker. 4 plus 4 people died in the pileup. Louisiana is the 18th state, which hints at 6 plus 6 plus 6, the number of the Antichrist. The representative's initials, MJ, equal 23, which pairs with the 4 plus 4 deaths. And his name, Mike, short for Michael, hints at Michelle. Michelle Obama will replace Harris. 23 minus 8 deaths equals 15 from the car pileup. Also on October 24th, 42 states sued Meta, Facebook, which hints at censorship of speech by the Antichrist, 42 months in Bible prophecy. The number 42 symbolizes the Antichrist and Antichrist system and enforcement of the mark of the Antichrist through the smartphone and internet. Okay, so we have this very prophetic date, this super date for signs. One of the signs is the 42 states. That's prophetic because of the number 42. It's suing Meta, which is symbolic of, and why they're suing, which hints at the censorship of speech. You know what, and so anyway, yes. And the mark of the Antichrist will be enforced through the smartphone and the internet. That's why in Bible prophecy, in Revelation chapter 13, the image of the beast, which is the smartphone and the internet, speaks an unutterable language. It speaks an ununderstandable language, which is what John wrote. It's computer language, in other words. All of this confirms the analysis that pointed to October 24th, 2023, including 7 days from October 17th. 4 times 44 months from February 24th, 2009, and Obama's commendation of Captain Sully, and 42 months from Harrison Ford's aviation mishap on April 24th, 2020, followed exactly 5 months later with his clearance by the FAA, which was exactly 37 months before October 24th. Okay. So, yeah, Captain Sully is a part of this, and Obama commended him at his first State of the Union speech. And Captain Sully crashed his plane in the Hudson River. It was a 9/11 sign. It was near Lower Manhattan. And let me see. Yeah, on and on. And God uses first in his signs. And Captain Sully, his plane crashed due to a bird strike, which is how it is predicted Kamala Harris's plane will crash due to a bird strike. The signs on October 17th revealed adding 3 sets of 7 days to reach November 7th. The prophetic significance of the university she visited was explained in the October 17th email and was read in the part 1 of this video. The 49th 7x7 vice president visited 7 academic colleges. 3 sets of 7 that parallels Joshua. The signs 7 days later on October 24th further confirmed this 7 and 7x7 symbolism. The signs on October 24th included the 700 deaths, the deadliest day for the Gazans, which was the result of 7 plus 700 deaths, Israel's deadliest day. As well, the 2 planes clipped their wings 7 miles from downtown Houston in Harris County. One of the signs on October 17th was the release of the trailer for Zone of Interest about Jews and the Holocaust. This was followed 7 days later with the release of by the same company of the trailer for Occupied City, also about the Jews and the Holocaust. At the end of this 3 sets of 7 days, Joshua symbolism on November 7th, the main story of the day was that the leader of Israel, Joshua symbolism, Netanyahu, shouted, in other words, trumpeted, which is what they did in Joshua, in the book of Joshua, before the walls collapsed, they shouted and blew trumpets. So the leader of Israel shouted, in other words, symbolically shouted, trumpeted, that the IDF had surrounded Gaza City and was now deep inside Gaza City. Netanyahu announced they had taken Gaza City. They had crossed over the perimeter around the city and were in the city. This is taking of the city of Jericho symbolism. and it came precisely at the end of the 3 sets of 7, as it did in the book of Joshua. Gaza City is now occupied, hence the connection to the movie Occupied City. Okay, that's amazing. Joshua died at 110. The I-10 highway hints at 110 because the I hints at the number 1. On November 7th, at the end of the symbolic 3 sets of 7 days, and Joshua led them in the 3 sets of 7 in the book of Joshua. So at the end of the 3 sets of 7 here on November 7th, a second super fog event occurred. A second car pileup that resulted in 1 death. The first car pileup resulted in 7 deaths. It is currently being reported as 7 deaths. Okay, so on the day of the car pileup, the first one, it was reported 7 deaths. Then we got some reports the next day about an additional death. But they're back to reporting 7 deaths. And so we're just going to go with that as the symbolic significance here, because if God wanted an 8 in there, he would have put it. And so who knows how the 8th person died or if it was in fact true, but whatever. It's 7 deaths. And this is in the 3 sets of 7 symbolism signs here. Joshua, who died at 110, led the Israelites in a symbolic 3 sets of 7. This 1 death in the second super fog car crash pileup in Louisiana hinted at the death of Harris in a plane crash in St. Louis. Louisiana hints at St. Louis. Louisiana is the 18th state, which hints at 6 plus 6 plus 6, the number of the Antichrist. The second car pileup hints at the second presidency for the Antichrist after the death of Harris in a plane crash. In English gematria, Louisiana is 690, which is a hint at Daniel chapter 9, the most central prophecy in the Bible, and the 70th 7 that follows the 69 weeks, the period of the Antichrist in the end times. That's why God uses 690, which is why the first car pileup had 7 deaths. It hinted at the 70th 7. It hinted at, because Louisiana hints at 690. It hinted at the 70th 7 period of the Antichrist. In Hebrew gematria, Louisiana is 460, which is 2 times 230, which hints at 223, and hints at 2023. And 223 is the 48th prime number, which hints at the 48th president Antichrist. Super fog is symbolism for not being able to see what is right in front of you, not being able to see what is in the immediate future, not being able to see that Barack Obama is about to return to the White House in the immediate future after the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. On November 7th, Harris was in the news for having had a conversation with the president of Israel, which is Joshua leader symbolism, on this day, on November 7th. President Isaac Herzog is simple English gematria for 222. This confirms that her crash in St. Louis will be exactly 22 years and 2 months after 9/11, and the events on 9/11 pointed to George Washington, who was born on the date 222. There were plane crashes on 9/11, including Flight 77, which hints at 11 times 7 and the date 11/7. And the eclipse over St. Louis that passed over St. Louis at 1:17 p.m. 11/11, November 11th this year, is also 2 plus 2 days after Harris spoke with the leader of Israel, which is Joshua's symbolism, whose name equals 222. And November 11th, like I'm saying here, will be 22 years and 2 months after 9/11. Also on November 7th, it was announced, trumpeted, that Harris would be visiting Boston on November 9th, which hints at 9/11. In the middle of this 2 plus 2 days connection from November 7th to November 11th. It was from Boston that 2 planes departed that crashed into the 2 towers on 9/11. Hence the 2 plus 2 days connection on either side of this 11/9 date. That's upcoming. That's today. The planes departed from Governor's Island, which is now Logan Airport, where John Winthrop lived and prayed. Winthrop led the 11 ship flotilla, which is why it was Flight 11 from Governor's Island on 9/11 that had a crew of 11 that hit the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11. It took 66, as in the 11th triangular number, days for the 101, which hints at 11, passengers to arrive on the Mayflower on the date 11/11 in the Julian calendar. Harris will be in Boston on 11/9, which hints at 9/11, 101 days after she was last in Boston for the NAACP conference. 11/11 will also be exactly 48, as in the 48th president, months after the huge fireball flew over the Gateway Arch in St. Louis on the 101 anniversary of the end of World War I at 11 a.m. on the date 11/11 in 1918. The day the Dow closed, on this same day, the Dow closed unchanged to within 6 decimal places. The first time it closed unchanged after the decimalization of the Dow was 101 days after 9/11. Also on November 7th, Harris tweeted about her visit to the UK and the summit on artificial intelligence with a production video of the trip and event. This confirms the analysis regarding the connection from the new Beatles song and George Harrison. So watch the Beatles video to know what I'm talking about there.